I do want to introduce our judges. Doing our Merino show today is Todd Taylor of Arlington, Wisconsin. He works at the University of Wisconsin-Madison as the sheep unit manager, and he's been there 22 years. He also raises Polypay, Targhee, and Hampshires. He and his wife and 4 adult children raise registered Targhees, Southdowns, Lincolns, Hampshires, and Polypays with a few crossbred weather dams thrown in for good measure. He's involved in ASI through genetic stakeholders, Sheep Genetics USA, and the National Sheep Improvement Program. He's been judging state and nationally shows, and he enjoys working with wool breeds and junior shows. Working on the Monadales is Brad Payne of Agency, Missouri. Brad has retired from Toyota and he's now self-employed with Plaza Lawn Care. Brad and his family own and operate Plaza Livestock and Plaza Lawn Care, and they run 50 head of registered Hampshire, Shropshire, and Southdown ewes. And judging our Shetlands is Bill Leib of Morris, Oklahoma. Bill is a chef instructor. And you may remember Bill, and we referred to him as Billy back then. And whenever I started here in the barn, he has shown sheep for a long time, along with his wife and their son Wyatt. They operate livestock, which consists of an elite flock of Rambouillets now. Let's welcome our judges here this evening.
Test. Thank you. All right, we'll start this over again. Thank you. Welcome to the Monadale show here at North American. Appreciate everybody that invited me to do the show. I apologize for the late evening, but we'll try to get through them as fast as we possibly can. And so this yearling buck class, I really appreciate this individual. He's super up-fronted. You like the ram, the way he moves around the ring, a lot of thickness, a lot of depth and width about this particular sheep. When you get around behind him, he doesn't disappoint you. I think an easy class winner for me. The second place ram, you really appreciate the thickness. He's probably a little bit thicker over his loin than our first place ram, but I think he starts to get a little choppy up through his shoulder and down into that brisket to maybe even move him up into that first place position. Another big, heavy bone ram, got a lot of width and dimension to him. Long-bodied. Just like to change a couple things about him. The next pair of rams down here, we have some rams that have some gas and some elevation. Rams look like they've been out breeding. They're a little bit thinner than condition than our first and second place bucks, but I like rams that are, we really appreciate the pattern and the bone work on them. There's just not enough to them today to move them on up into the first part of this class. Thank you.
Placing on that class of yearling rams for the Monadales, first place goes to Corzat 2244, Mallory Corzat, Berwick, Illinois. Second place to Fleck V2, Craig Fleck, Brookings, South Dakota. Third to entry 2179, Ryan Gann, Leaf River, Illinois. And fourth to entry number 2181, Catherine Mrozinski, Rolling Prairie, Indiana.
Good evening. Certainly a pleasure to be here and judge your Shetland show this evening. Great class of yearling rams from top to bottom. Certainly some differences in terms of structure and design. Ram I'm starting with, certainly not the biggest ram out here, but a ram when we get behind him just has the most natural base width from front to rear. We split that fleece open. It's very uniform from front to back. Has very nice luster, very soft to the touch. Ram here in second, another ram you kind of like when you get behind him in terms of his natural width and dimension. A ram that maybe doesn't have quite the softness in his fleece as we see in the ram that wins the class, but a ram that falls into second quite well. Ram here in third, a ram I really enjoy the fleece on this ram. A ram that I'd maybe like to change his tail in terms of breed type just a little bit more for me. Maybe square him up a little between the hocks when he's on the move, but certainly a very nice ram to fall into third. The ram here in fourth, a ram you really appreciate in terms of his structural design when you get your hands on him. A ram that maybe doesn't carry quite the uniformity of crimp from front to rear that we see in the rams above him, but certainly a nice usable ram to fall into four. The ram here in five, a ram I really like in terms of his front end design when you get in front of him. A ram that maybe when he moves just tracks a little more narrow than the rams above him, but certainly a nice start to our show. Let's give these exhibitors a round of applause.
Are we on now? All right. Well, again, like everybody else has said today, it's really a pleasure to be here and be able to be on this side of the fence on the green shavings. It's been a few years since I was here to judge the Ramblets. I think I got to figuring it out. I've come to in North American, and I know this is the 50th anniversary, and I think the first one I made was a National 4-H contest, and I think 88 when I was a member of the Wyoming team at that time, and I think I competed in the other two collegiate contests before. We started showing here as a family 2003, 2004 after we moved to Wisconsin. So it's really a pleasure to be invited back by the North American and the Merino breed to evaluate their national show. I think if we have a show with the quality we start off with in this Ram class, I'm going to really enjoy this night and just really admire this breed for fleece quality and some of the things that they maintained in the genetics of this breed. I think 1 and 2 in this class are extremely close as we talk about this yearling buck class. We're giving up some frame size and some overall performance probably in that second place ram over the first place ram over second. He's a little smaller framed, he's a little shorter bodied, but he's just a notch more correct. I like the slope to that shoulder. I like the set to that shoulder blade. It makes him move out a little freer and easier when we set him in motion. He's got a little longer neck to him. I like the staple length and the uniformity of that fleece from shoulder to bridge. Maybe not quite as uniform as the ram we have in second, but it's still soft to the touch. It's still very fine, very correct, very complete kind of fleece. Just a good combination ram to win this class. Granted, we got a bigger buck here in second. If you want growth and extension, he's elevated at the top of his shoulders. He's long and level down his top. My problem with him is we put him in motion, he wants to drop that shoulder forward just a little bit, makes him stride out a little bit shorter. He wants to pop his top just a little bit more than we like to see. He is the nicest fleece ram in the class. He's bright and white when you open that fleece up. Very uniform and staple and grade from shoulder to britch. I like that about him. I just would like to see him a notch more structurally sound. I'd like to fix that mouth structure just a little bit on both of those first two rams, but especially on him. I think if we could change him on his feet and legs just a little bit, we could easily switch that top pair. Really nice ram here that's more moderate in his frame size, very smaller, or a lot smaller framed ram, a little tighter horned ram. Excuse me. He just gives up a lot of frame size to those top two. He's not near as uniform in his fleece as those top two rams. He wants to get a little bit coarser on that britch. Like to level him out of his hip and fix his hind legs just a little bit to move him on up the line, but a nice ram to fall in the third hole. Ram in fourth. Ram that what you see is what you get. There's not as much wool on this ram. He's not as long. He's definitely not as uniform. I like the front 2/3 of that fleece. I'd like to change his britch and his lower leg a little bit on that towards that rear end. I think if we could change that, uniform him up, we could move him up. Need to give him more width and more mass to move him up with these other 3 rams as well. Congratulations on a nice set to start the show off with.
Really nice class of fall ram lambs here. Ram I'm going to start with is a ram that you really appreciate the up and out look about this particular ram. He's really straight down the top. He's good on his feet and legs. He moves around the ring quite nicely. Maybe I'd like to give this guy just a little bit more, depth and a little more width to him. That's where my second place ram, I think, overpowers our first place buck. I really appreciate the depth and width of flank and overall thickness of top. I just like to fix this buck on his front, up through his front end, down on his front feet there, to move him up into this first part of this class. The next ram, I really appreciate the overall length of body and the way this ram handles. He's shown in really short fleece. I just like when the ram starts to walk out, he wants to roach his top just a little bit. He's a little shorter sided than my second place ram for me today, but I think another nice ram here in third. The next 2 bucks, just giving up a little bit of more correctness. I'd like to change the nose on the ram down here in fifth a little bit, but that's a really nice class of fall bucks. Thank you.
Placing on our classes, first for the Shetland class of yearling rams, first place goes to entry number 2783, M. Wonderpets Kataro 2220, Madison Biak, Lebanon, Indiana. Second place to 2791, Lambda 0676, Larry Hopkins, Zionsville, Indiana. Third to Dordery Levitt, Parker City, Indiana. Fourth place to Mackenzie Eisenhower, Lebanon, Indiana. Fifth place to Elizabeth Levitt, Parker City, Indiana. Sixth to Abby Funk, West Lafayette, Indiana. 7, Parker Eisenhower, Lebanon, Indiana. 8th place to Dordery Levitt, Parker City, Indiana. 9 to Hannah Smith, Rhineyville, Kentucky. And 10 to Evelyn Maines, Lebanon, Indiana. Placing on the class of senior ram lambs for the Shetlands, first place goes to Liberty Acres, Pendleton, Dordery Levitt, Parker City, Indiana. Placing on the class of Merinos, yearling rams, first place to 2069, Gadsby 2290, Betts Sheep Farm, Felton, Delaware. Second place to Mendenhall 21125, Megan's Merinos, Genera, Ohio. Third to Adriana Finley, Asheville, Ohio. And 4 to Dylan Marvin, Wauseon, Ohio. Placing on the senior ram lambs for the Monadales, first place goes to Jacobson 2306, Cody Jacobson, La Grande, California. Second place to Pete Fish 2029, J.W. Sims Reisner, Albion, Illinois. Third to Chad Bruns, Herman, Minnesota. 4 to Chad Bruns. And 5 to Vondenheuvel Kids, St. Mary's, Ohio.
Over here in the Merino ring, we bring in our senior buck lambs or our fall bucks. I think we got a pretty nice ram to win this class. I think he's just super correct on his feet and legs, really level on his top, big square hip. Love the fleece on this ram. You open it up and it's very bright and white, very uniform, very dense and soft to the touch from shoulder to britch. Just pretty handily wins this class. Ram in second, a very athletic ram, as we could see as he got away and ran around the ring a little while and did a couple of leapfrogs over there. I like the length and extension on this ram. He's a youthful appearing ram. He's very fresh and very young in his look. I think he's going to be a big yearling ram. Like to change the fleece just a little bit. He does want to change that character and crimp and density as we get back into that hip and lower leg. Not quite as uniform as we'd like to see. Maybe stouten him up just a little bit when we compare him to that first place buck. Two nice fall bucks. Let's give these exhibitors a round of applause. Congratulations.
Over here on the Monadale side, really four nice bucks out here for the champion ram drive on the senior division. If you get a nice round of applause, if we could, for just the four really sound bucks that really appreciate the width and dimension, the thickness. Four really correct type rams. I'll go out and congratulate your champion ram and reserve in this particular division, and we'll move on to the buck lambs. Thank you.
Senior champion for the E.H. Mattingly National Monadale Show, senior champion ram goes to our first place yearling ram, Corzat 2244, Mallory Corzat, Berwick, Illinois. The reserve senior champion was out of the senior ram lamb class, Jacobson 2306, Cody Jacobson, La Grande, California.
As we get out here into our ram lamb class, certainly some variations in terms of types and kinds. The black ram I'm starting with, I think, gets to the front of this class pretty easily in my mind. As we study him, he's the most square to the ground, the most true out over his top. And then when you split this fleece, there's really a ton of luster from front to rear. If I was being maybe a little critical, I'd like to soften that fleece up to the touch just a little bit, but I think the uniformity and luster and quality brings him to the top of the class. Ram here in second, a ram I really like the fleece on this ram. A beautiful fleece from front to rear, a ram that maybe doesn't hit the ground quite as square as our first place ram, a ram that maybe gets a little coarser in his shoulder design, but again, certainly a very nice ram. Probably has the best horn set of any ram out here. Ram here in third is kind of a ram that it doesn't really catch your eye when you first look at him, but you get your hands on him. He's square made, he's well made. Biggest thing with this ram compared to the two above him, I just like to see a little more luster to his fleece, a little more uniformity from front to rear to move him up any higher. The ram here in fourth, the big volume ram, I like that about him. A ram I just need to change up off his front pasterns a little bit, give his fleece a little more uniformity compared to the rams above him. Ram here in fifth, probably one of the younger appearing rams out here, a ram you really appreciate in terms of his base width, but a ram that maybe just gets a little lower in his chest floor, doesn't carry quite through the top squareness that we see in the rams above them. But again, a nice class. Let's give these exhibitors a round of applause.
Placing on the early spring ram lamb class for the Shetlands, first place goes to Liberty Acres Caliber 325, Doherty Lovett, Parker City, Indiana. Second place to Finnegan INH 25800, Abby Funk, West Lafayette, Indiana. Third place to Larry Hopkins, Zionsville, Indiana. 4 to Doherty Levitt, Parker City, Indiana. 5, Madison Biok, Lebanon, Indiana. 6, Emma O'Brien, Lebanon, Indiana. 7, to Evelyn Maines, Lebanon, Indiana. And 8th place to Hannah Smith, Rhineyville, Kentucky.
I'll be honest, I'm not finding the one that moves himself up very, very easily. So I went with the most correct ram, really, really straight down its top. You love this sheep up through his front end. Does he have enough rib? Does he have enough flank? Does he have all the thickness that I particularly like? No. But he is correct, and he's the only one that in this class that moves free, easy, in my mind, and that's why he's up here in the first place. I really wanted to use this second place buck. He's got the width, he's got the dimension, he's got the shoulder placement. He's acting a little ornery today, so he's not, but the part that kills me for him is those back feet. If I could fix that, he'd be in the first hole, easy. But I'm a stickler on correctness, and the way that they move around the ring, and that's the way I see him today. I really appreciate the smoothness and the youthfulness about this third place ram. When he goes to track out, he's just not acting right or whatever it is. I think the ram is just put together well. The longer we're out here, the longer he's starting to go get a little longer on those back pasterns as well. But I really appreciate this, the style and the balance about this particular ram. Down the line here, we have 3 bucks that have some things that I appreciate. You really like the elevation and cleanliness up through the front. You like some width and some dimension to them. I just like to fix them structurally in a few different places to move them on up in the upper part of this class. Thank you.
Results from the January Ram Lamb class for the E.H. Mattingly National Monadale Show. First place goes to Miller, 23M101, Greg Miller, Bruce, South Dakota. Second place to Jacobson, 2325, Laura Brinkman, Goodhue, Minnesota. Third place to Craig Fleck, Brookings, South Dakota. Fourth place to Clara Lumen, Lake City, Minnesota. Fifth to Mallory Corzat, Berwick, Illinois. Sixth, Vondenheuvel Kids, St. Mary's, Ohio.
Over here in the Shetland ring, I think a really nice class of buck lambs we have out here. Ram I'm starting with obviously is not the biggest ram out here. A ram that when you study him, he's just built really cool. He's clean up through his chest floor. He stands out good and square on the legs. You get your hands on him, I think he's got adequate dimension down his top. When you split his fleece open, I think he's got a nice fleece. I would maybe like to give it a little more shine, a little more luster, but I think very uniform from front to rear. I think where he excels the ram in second is just that overall structural soundness when we evaluate him from the ground up. Ram here in second probably has the best fleece in the class, in my opinion, the most uniform from front to rear, a ram that's probably the stoutest and thickest down his top. However, I just really need to change him off those rear legs a little bit as he moves about the ring in comparison to the ram that wins the class, but a ram that falls into second quite nicely. Ram in third, a ram that you really appreciate in terms of how he's designed, in terms of his structural soundness up through the front end, the way those shoulders lays into his backbone. A ram that just maybe that fleece is just getting a little dry. I'd just like to see a little more shine, a little more softness to it, but I think falls into third quite nicely. Ram here in fourth, a big volume kind of ram, a ram that maybe just doesn't carry quite the same uniformity of fleece, but you really appreciate him in terms of his dimension and his design. Ram here in fifth, a ram I love the luster and shine to this fleece, but the fleece is just a little too ununiform as we get back to the britch and through the side compared to the 4 rams above him. But again, a very nice class. Let's give these exhibitors a round of applause.
Placing on the Shetland Late Spring Ram Lamb class, first place goes to entry 2804, WS Farms Tom Tom 0861, William Higgs, West Stockbridge, Massachusetts. Second place to entry number 2807, Liberty Acres Felix 331, Dordery Levitt, Parker City, Indiana. Third place to Mershell Springs Tube, West Stockbridge, Massachusetts. Fourth place to Dordery Levitt, Parker City, Indiana. 5 to Mackenzie Eisenhower, Lebanon, Indiana. Sixth place, Elizabeth Levitt, Parker City, Indiana. Seventh place Madison Biak, Lebanon, Indiana. 8th place, Mackenzie Eisenhower, Lebanon, Indiana. 9th place, Emma O'Brien, Lebanon, Indiana. And 10th to Parker Eisenhower, Lebanon, Indiana.
We get into our early spring bucks here in the Merino show, and I think we've got a really nice set from top to bottom. I think the top two are pretty close in my mind. I think this first place buck just wins it on fleece quality alone. I think he's just a notch finer, and he just opens up with a neater crimp to it, a crimp that carries back all the way to the britch like it should. When you get in there and squeeze it and handle it, it's softer to the touch. It's just a notch cleaner out there on the tips in that second place ram. I'm a sucker for a big, nice horned ram here. I love a lot of things about this little guy in second. I like his body structure. I think he's really wide and thick down his top. He's got a big square hip on him, got a lot of bone underneath him. I like the rib shape on that ram. I think it makes a very, very close decision in the top pair. Went ahead and used the better fleece ram. This second place ram just isn't quite as fine in his uniform, not near as soft to the touch, not quite as uniform through his britch and lower leg as we see in that first place buck. Probably a little bit more environmental maybe than it is genetic, but I do think it's just a touch coarser and just not quite as uniform as the first place buck. Third place buck, a very youthful appearing horned ram here, a ram that's got a bright future. I like the density of this fleece. It's a little shorter staple. It's harder to read at this stage than what we see in those first two bucks. I read him as being a little younger in his age than the two ahead of him, but a super nice buck that I think has got some future to him. I think he just kind of lands in third hole quite nicely. Bigger frame buck here in fourth, a buck that if you want one that's going to grow and perform, I like that in him. He's elevated through his shoulder. He's long down his top and out his hip. He gets a little straighter on both ends through the shoulder blade, through that hock, I think, than I'd like to see. I'd like to see a little bit more quality in that fleece as well. There's just a little bit of a crimp and character break as it creeps up on the side on both sides. Not the uniformity, not the density, not the staple length we see in the first three bucks. Just fits in fourth hole quite nicely. Same can be said for the fifth place buck, another youthful, another immature buck, a buck that I like the front shoulder on that fleece. I think it changes quite a bit in grade as we move back, especially when you get in that britch and lower leg. I'd like to change that about him, just clean him up a little bit there, give him a little bit more mass and body width and dimension compared to some of the other bucks ahead of him. Nice set. Let's give these exhibitors a round of applause. Congratulations.
Placing on the Merino Early Junior Ram Lamb class, first place to entry 2085, in body 2308, Megan's Merinos, Genera, Ohio. Second place to 2083, Gadsby 2319, Greenleaf Valley, Tim and Casey Gadsby, Stoneboro, Pennsylvania. Third place to Diller Sheep Farm, Steve Diller, Herod, Ohio. Fourth to Megan's Merinos, Genera, Ohio. 5 to Adriana Finley, Asheville, Ohio. 6 to Adriana Finley, and 7 to Alyssa Marvin, Wason, Ohio. Placing on the pair of Ram Lambs for the Shetlands, first place to Dordery Levitt, Parker City, Indiana. Second place, Mackenzie Eisenhower, Lebanon, Indiana. Third, Madison Biak, Lebanon, Indiana. 4, Emma O'Brien, Lebanon, Indiana. And 5 to Larry Hopkins, Zionsville, Indiana. Now showing for champion ram overall for the Shetlands.
As we bring all our firsts and seconds out here for our champion Shetland Ram, I'm really happy with the individuals we have out here. These are sheep that are structurally sound from the ground up, have some nice fleeces to them, but in my mind, I think there's two that just jump out and grab me, and I'll go select them as champion and reserve. But let's give all these exhibitors a big round of applause.
Really a tough class of buck lambs here. We got three individuals up here at the top of the class. This is the way I see them today. I'm sure maybe some of you would like to see them a different direction, but this is the way I'm seeing them, and this is why. So the most complete individual in the top of this class is a ram that I'm using, obviously. A ram that's just got a lot of width and dimension. When you get your hands on him, he's really long from that 13th rib back. He's got a really big top in him. One of the best docked rump structured rams out here in this particular class. Ram that's just got a lot of width and dimension and style and balance to him, and I think moves himself quite up there quite easily. Second place ram is maybe a little taller fronted ram. He's a little sharper in his shoulder and into his blade right there. A ram that once again is really nice into his dock area. Maybe pound for pound, he probably just could use a few more pounds to get around this first place ram, but I really appreciate the feet and legs on both of these bucks. Down here in third, a really super well balanced ram. You really appreciate the overall length of body. He's really good down his top. When I get around him side profile, he's just not deep enough for me. He's a little kind of weenie dog look, I guess you could say. I'd just like to give him a little more width and dimension. All these bucks are really, really good on their feet and legs, and they move around the ring fairly well. And this is the way I see them. Down the line, we have some bucks that have some different similarities and some differences that I'd like to change about them, but a really nice set of bucks for this class. Thank you.
Placing on the February and later born ram lambs for the Monadales. First place goes to entry 2201, Kuykendall, 1259, Kuykendall, Monadales, Richland Center, Wisconsin. Second place to entry 2205, Kuykendall, 1231, Mallory Corzat, Berwick, Illinois. Third place, Cody Jacobson, La Grande, California. Fourth place, Easton Novak, Rolling Prairie, Indiana. 5, Jasmine Gates, Cairo, Missouri. Sixth place, Craig Fleck, Brookings, South Dakota. Seventh place, also Craig Fleck. Eighth place to Vondenheuvel Kids, St. Mary's, Ohio. I don't know if you, that's yours too. That's the February, oh, no, that's my copy. Duh. Placing on the class of pair ram lambs for the Monadales, first place goes to Cody Jacobson, LeGrand, California. Second place, Mallory Corzat, Berwick, Illinois. Third place, Chad Bruns, Herman, Minnesota. And 4, Vandenheuvel Kids, St. Mary's, Ohio. We are now ready to show for Junior Champion and Reserve Junior Champion Ram for the Monadales.
Well, I think we move into this younger class of Rams, and I think this is a little more challenging. I don't know as if there's one that just jumped out and hit me in being a dual or a complete Ram without some faults and some things that I'd change. But I'm going to go ahead and start with this rugged Ram that we're going to begin with. Really like the head on this Ram. I love that horn set. I love the curls to that. I think he's a stout Ram. He's really wide and thick down his top and square out of his hip. His fleece is adequate, as acceptable as we need to start this class. Maybe not the best fleece ram in the class, but very productive fleece. I like the lock formation. I like the density. I like the uniformity. Maybe could change a little bit of the britch wool on that ram, make him a little more ideal. Maybe a notch more ideal ram in terms of his fleece quality here in second. Just not as rugged a ram, not as wide made, not as big and bold in his rib. He too plays out a little bit in his hip and through his britch in terms of his fleece uniformity. It's not quite as long and quite as dense, I don't think, as the ram in front of him. But again, a good fleeced ram that goes into second hole with some length and extension and correctness to him. Probably the most high quality fleece, maybe if we could change the britch just a little bit, is his third place buck. He's really dense. He's very fine, very soft to the touch, very uniform from shoulder to britch. I like that about that ram. He just shortens up quite a bit. He gives up some width and thickness and some correctness on his hind legs. I think he just falls into third hole quite nicely. Bigger growth here ram here in fourth, a ram that's starting to give me some fleece issues. He's got a little bit of a character break, maybe some belly wool type character moving up on that side on his rib cage. Clean that up a little bit, dense him up a little bit. I like the body and the style and balance of that ram. I think he matches that first place buck quite nicely. We just need to fix his fleece quite a bit. Really youthful ram, really young appearing ram here on the end. I like the growth potential of this buck. He wants to round out of his hip, not carry his hind legs quite as well. I like the fineness and the softness of that fleece. I just like to change the lock formation on it just a little bit. I think he's just a little more pencil locked in terms of that lock formation. He's a little more open in his wool. Just doesn't seem like he's going to shear as many pounds as what these rams are ahead of him. If we can densen that up a little bit and bold that lock formation up, I think we can move that fleece on up quite a bit. Really nice set. I think that a good group of ram lambs. Let's give these exhibitors a big round of applause. Congratulations.
Super set of Monadale buck lambs out here for junior champion. It's really easy in my mind. I think we've got a pair of buck lambs that'll be champion and reserve down here on this end. Bucks that are very similar in their type and kind. You like their elevation up through their front. They've got some ribs, some width, and some dimension to them. That'll be your champion and reserve for me today. Thank you.
For the Monadale show, our junior champion goes first place February and later ram lamb, Kuykendall 1259, Kuykendall Monadales, New Richland Center, Wisconsin. The reserve junior champion was second in that February and later class, Kuykendall 1231, Mallory Corzat, Berwick, Illinois. Placing on the Merino class of late junior ram lambs, first place to Gadsby 2324, Greenleaf Valley, Tim and Casey Gadsby, Stoneboro, Pennsylvania. Second place to Inbody 2322, Megan's Merinos, Genera, Ohio. Third to Diller Sheep Farm, Steve Diller, Herod, Ohio. 4 to Greenleaf Valley, Tim and Casey Gadsby, Stoneboro, Pennsylvania. And 5 to Laurel Stone, Veneta, Oregon. Placing on the Merino pair of Ram Lambs, first place goes to Greenleaf Valley, Tim and Casey Gadsby, Stoneboro, Pennsylvania. Second place, Megan's Merinos, Genera, Ohio. Third place, Diller Sheep Farm, Steve Diller, Herod, Ohio. And 4 to Adriana Finley, Asheville, Ohio.
If we could get a nice round of applause over here on the Monadale side of things with the 4 really super nice bucks out here. In my mind, really appreciate the overall volume and the length of body and the width and dimension. The judge of Monadale's here quite a few years ago. Probably don't even remember that part, but just a really nice set of sheep. Go out and congratulate your champion in reserve for me today. Congratulations.
Grand Champion Ram for the Monadale Show goes to our Senior Champion Ram out of the yearling Ram class, Corzat 2244, Mallory Corzat, Berwick, Illinois. Reserve Grand Champion went to our Reserve Senior Champion out of the Senior Ram Lamb class, Jacobson 2306, Cody Jacobson, La Grande, California.
Certainly a very nice set of yearling ewes here in our Shetland show. Ewe I'm starting with kind of finds her way to the top pretty easy in my mind. She's the most fault-free as we evaluate her, has one of the nicest fleeces in the class, and yet ties that together in probably one of the most structurally sound packages we have out here as well. The ewe in second, a ewe I really love when I get my hands on her. She's probably the stoutest sheep we've seen in the show ring so far in our Shetland show today. But a ewe that maybe her fleece is starting to felt a little as we get down to that lower britch. A fleece I'd like to just maybe soften up compared to the ewe that wins the class. But in terms of body volume and dimension, this ewe is really stout in this group. You here in third, a ewe you really like, kind of a fault-free individual. Just maybe as I split the fleece, I don't have quite the uniformity we see in the 2 above her, but I think a ewe that's certainly a very valuable piece and falls into third. The ewe here in fourth, a ewe I really like her fleece. A ewe I'd just like to maybe stretch her out a little from front to rear compared to the ewes above her. Maybe a ewe that just gets a little coarser in her shoulder compared to the ewes above her, but certainly a ewe deserving to be in our top 5 lineup. The ewe coming out here in fifth, a ewe that I'd just like to clean her up through the base of her chest floor compared to the ewes above her, but again, a very nice, high-quality individual. Let's give all these exhibitors a round of applause.
Fun to go through and evaluate these Merino Rams, and I think we get these 8 back out here, and we got a lot of quality. I'm really happy with the fleece quality. I think the uniformity, the fineness, the fiber diameter, that staple length, that density in all of these bucks. There's some that are a little bit better than others, but I think in general all 8 of these make a really nice set of productive rams and are going to go off and shear some awfully nice fleeces. To me, there's one out here that just puts everything together with fleece quality, growth and extension, uniformity of fleece and fiber diameter, density, softness, fineness. We're going to use this senior buck lamb for your champion today. I really like that ram. I think it gets close from there, but to me, the one that's got the fleece the next most like that. I like the ruggedness. I like the design. I like the structural soundness. I'm going to go back and get that yearling for reserve. Congratulations on a nice set of Merino bucks.
For the Merino show, our grand champion ram went to the senior ram lamb, entry 2077 in body F2250, Megan's Merinos, Genera, Ohio. Reserve grand champion ram to the first place yearling ram 2069, Gadsby 2290, Betts Sheep Farm, Felton, Delaware. Placing on the Shetland class of yearling ewes, first place went to lot 2827, Vega 0061, Emma O'Brien, Lebanon, Indiana. Second place to 2824, Liberty Acres Parsnip, 290, Dordery Lovett, Parker City, Indiana. Third to Evelyn Maines, Lebanon, Indiana. 4 to Evelyn Maines. Fifth place, Madison Byelk, Lebanon, Indiana. Sixth place to Dordery Lovett, Parker City, Indiana. Seventh place, Emma O'Brien, Lebanon, Indiana. Eighth place, Parker Eisenhower, Lebanon, Indiana. 9 to Mackenzie Eisenhower, Lebanon, Indiana. And 10th place, Hannah Smith, Rhineyville, Kentucky. Placing on the pair of yearling ewes for the Shetland Show, first place to Evelyn Maines, Lebanon, Indiana. Second, Dordery Lovett, Parker City, Indiana. Third place, Emma O'Brien, Lebanon, Indiana. And for Hannah Smith, Rhineyville, Kentucky.
Just two entries out here in our senior ewe-lamb class. Ewe I'm starting with, you get your hands on her. This is a really massive top kind of Shetland out here. A ewe I really like her uniformity of fleece from front to rear. If I could, I'd maybe like to just soften it up to the touch a little bit, maybe square her up a little bit off her rear legs, but a ewe that you just really appreciate her volume and body dimension when you get in under that fleece. Young ladies, ewe here in second. A ewe, I really like the luster and shine this fleece has, the softness it has, but a ewe that maybe just doesn't carry quite the true dimension, maybe gets a little coarser in terms of her shoulder design compared to the ewe that wins the class, but two nice ewes. Let's give these exhibitors a round of applause.
Placing on the Shetland Senior Ewe Lamb class, first place to Liberty Acres Penny, 0294, Dordery Lovett, Parker City, Indiana. Second place to M. Wonder Pets Kuroko, 2235, Evelyn Maines, Lebanon, Indiana.
In our class of Shetland ewe lambs out here, I think the ewe that wins this class finds her way to the top pretty handily in my mind. I just love the fleece on this ewe, extremely uniform from front to rear, has a lot of luster, has a lot of softness to touch. Then when we get our hands on this ewe, she's actually designed very well, made really well. I really like how she carries out through her hip. I think gets to the top quite easily. Ewe here in second, a ewe I really like in terms of her thickness and dimension down her top. If I could change this ewe, I'd like to maybe just soften that fleece up, give it a touch more luster in comparison to the ewe that wins the class, but I think fits into second hole quite nicely. Ewe here in third, a ewe I really, really like in terms of her dimension, in terms of her front end. A ewe that just maybe that fleece doesn't carry quite the uniformity we see in the two ewes above her, but I think slots into three quite well. Ewe here in fourth, a ewe that kind of a problem ewe for me here in this class. I like a lot of things about her. I like how she's built from the ground up. But a ewe, as I get into that fleece, it's maybe getting a little dry, maybe getting a little weathered to it compared to the ewes above her, but I think falls into four quite well. Ewe here in five, a big-bodied, dimensional kind of ewe. A ewe that just doesn't have quite the uniformity in her fleece compared to the ewes above her. But again, a really nice class. Let's give these exhibitors a round of applause.
Placing on the early spring ewe lamb class for the Shetlands, first place goes to 2841, Emma O'Brien, Lebanon, Indiana. Second place to 2843, Liberty Acre Corrit, Dordery Levitt, Parker City, Indiana. Third to Elizabeth Levitt, Parker City, Indiana. Fourth place, Dordery Levitt, Parker City, Indiana. 5, Emma O'Brien, Lebanon, Indiana. 6, Evelyn Maines, Lebanon, Indiana. 7th place, Mackenzie Eisenhower, Lebanon, Indiana. 8th place, Hannah Smith, Rhineyville, Kentucky. And 9, Hannah Smith, Rhineyville, Kentucky.
Just a super set of yearling ewes all the way through. Unfortunately, we had to send some of them back, but I can tell you that this is an extremely deep group, just a really nice set. I'm going to make one comment before I start talking about them. So there was maybe one that already walked out. That was probably one of the better tracking sheep out here. But in this particular class, we're throwing that one out the window because I'm not really happy with the way each individual, there's something different about each individual that I don't really care for. It's just my opinion. So we're scratching that, and we're going to the way I see the particular animals. So the first place yearling ewe, super smooth up through her front. You really appreciate the length of body. She's the strongest top. She's the best docked ewe out here in this particular class. What a super amount of width and dimension from that 13th rib back. Just a really nice ewe. So I'm going to comment about her. I don't like the way she tracks up on her front feet. She wants to trot around the ring. I'd like to see her a little smoother in her walk. That's how I see that particular. Talk about width and dimension in this second place ewe is amazing. Just a lot of rib to this ewe. You get your hands on her. She's really super down her top. A lot of width and dimension from hooks to pins. I'd like to change this sheep the way she kind of walks out. She wants to walk a little wide and get a little straight off of her back legs. If I could change that about her, I'd probably move her up. One of the most eye-appealing ewes in the class is down here in third. I don't think the ewe's got enough to her. I'd like to see a little more flank to her. I'd like to see a little more weight on her. But I think a ewe that's really, really nice, well designed. She's good in her front. She's good back down through her dock. Like I said, I just like to give her a little bit more. The part that I don't like about her is when she wants to track out, she wants to roach her top up a little bit, get up underneath herself, and that's the way I see her in third. Down here in fourth, you really appreciate the just the overall design of both fourth and fifth. These ewes are really close in type and kind for me. When you compare them to the ones in front of them, I'd like to see them a little longer flank to flank to move on up in the class. These ewes, they move around the ring fairly well. I'd like to change a couple things, but just a lot of this pair in particular, and I think the number 6 hole ewe that went out, just three ewes that were really, really close in their type and kind. Really appreciate the correctness of all these ewes, and that'll be our class for today. Thank you.
Placing on the yearling ewe class for the Monadale show. First place goes to entry number 2236, Jacobson, 2206, Cody Jacobson, La Grande, California. Second place to entry number 2223, Fleck, V24, Craig Fleck, Brookings, South Dakota. Third to 2230, Joey Slack, Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. 4 to Mallory Corzet, Berwick, Illinois. 5, Kuykendall Monadales, Richland Center, Wisconsin. 6, Kuykendall Monadales. 7th place to Ty Smith, Stewardson, Illinois. 8th place to Cody Jacobson, La Grande, California. 9 to J.W. Sims Reisner, Albion, Illinois. And 10th place to Greg Miller, Bruce, South Dakota.
Well, I apologize for maybe spending a little more time on this class, but there's a lot of things to sort through, and quite honestly, I was kind of trying to maybe sort them on fleece, but to be honest, there's not really a bad fleece from top to bottom. Maybe 1 or 2 that have got some uniformity issues, 1 or 2 that have maybe got a little bit density issues, maybe one that's got a little belly wool on them, but in all, this is a beautiful set of fleeces on these ewes from top to bottom, so it was kind of hard to really sort and find one that would either go to the bottom because of that or even rise to the top because because of that. The ewe that we're starting with, I think, is the combination sheep. I love this ewe from a brood ewe standpoint. I think she's very correct on her feet and legs. She moves out and tracks around the ring as well as anything in here. These top four kind of sorted themselves up on the move. They just handle their hind legs and their front legs a little bit better. They keep that top nice and level and correct as they move around the ring. They just seem a little bit more comfortable tracking around, and I think she excels in that. She's a bigger hipped ewe than the second place ewe. She's wider on her hind legs than that second place ewe. She's got a little bit more fleece length. I think there's just a little bit more production there today than what we see in that second place ewe. I like the uniformity, the fineness, and the density of that fleece in this second place ewe. Again, she's a very correct, very youthful kind of a ewe that's very feminine through her front end. She's got a little bit more length and extension through that neck, maybe a little more femininity up front than that first place ewe, but she just kind of rounds into that second hole quite nicely. Big-bodied, broody ewe here coming in next, a ewe that doesn't have quite as much bone and isn't quite as wide through her hip and through her hind legs as we see those first two ewes. Again, a very long stapled, very productive, very uniform fleece. A little more density here in a more conventional ewe, a little more moderate framed ewe, but again, a ewe that's very structurally sound, very square on the corner, moves out around the ring exceptionally well. Ewe in fifth is a ewe that from the ring probably wonder why she's up here. This is my best fleeced ewe. This ewe is extremely nice in that fleece. You can tell she's been blanketed. She's extremely clean. I like the lock formation. I like the density. I like the uniformity of grade from shoulder to britch on this little ewe, and there's really nothing wrong with her from a feet and legs standpoint. She gives up some growth and some style and some balance to some of these others, but I really appreciate the fleece on this ewe. I appreciate the brood ewe potential, and she travels around the ring adequately well. I think she fits in fifth hole quite nicely. Again, let's give these exhibitors a good round of applause. Congratulations on a nice set.
Placing on the yearling youth class for the Merinos, first place goes to Gadsby, 2254, Betts Sheep Farm, Felton, Delaware. Second place to Diller R552, Morgan Inbody, Bluffton, Ohio. Third place to Greenleaf Valley, Tim and Casey Gadsby, Stoneboro, Pennsylvania. Fourth place, Megan's Merinos, Genera, Ohio. Fifth place, Laurel Stone, Benetta, Oregon. Sixth place to Megan's Merinos, Genera, Ohio. 7, Diller Sheep Farm, Steve Diller, Harrod, Ohio. 8th to Adriana Finley, Asheville, Ohio. 9 to Greenleaf Valley, Tim and Casey Gadsby, Stoneboro, Pennsylvania. And 10 to Diller Sheep Farm, Steve Diller, Harrod, Ohio.
Out on the Monadale side, a really nice set of slick yearling ewes out here. You guys started the class with just a massive ewe. She's got a lot of rib and a lot of width and dimension to her. Maybe you'd like to change her in that shoulder blade just a little bit, but that's being super critical on this particular ewe. She's a really correct, nice ewe. A lot of width and dimension back from that 13th rib back into the tail head. Really appreciate that ewe. Really classy looking ewe down here in second. A ewe that maybe starts to shorten up a little bit, doesn't quite have enough twist for me today to move her up into that first part of class today, but I think a really nice complete ewe down here in second. Third place ewe, I like this ewe from the beginning. When I started to walk her out, I like to just change her off those back legs. If I could change her off those back legs, I'd probably move her up a tick at least one spot. Just a really nice ewe to round out third place. Really particularly, I appreciate the fourth place ewe. Yeah, she gives up some size and some frame, but yes, she's got some meat and some muscle to her. Just a really nice ewe to go down here in fourth. In my particular opinion, I just went with ewe that has a little bit more frame to her. I really appreciate the muscling and the amount of width and dimension on this particular ewe. I just like to give her a bigger frame scale for me today. Down here in fifth, we have another nice ewe that kind of is really close to our second place ewe. It's just not enough to her for me today to put her up into that fourth place spot. Thank you.
Placing on the pair of Merino yearling ewes, first place goes to Greenleaf Valley, Tim and Casey Gadsby, Stoneboro, Pennsylvania. Second place, Megan's Merinos, Genera, Ohio. Third place, Diller Sheep Farm, Steve Diller, Harrod, Ohio. And fourth place, Adriana Finley, Asheville, Ohio. Placing on the slick-sheared yearling ewes, for the Monadale show. First place to Marvel 5LET, J.W. Sims Reisner, Albion, Illinois. Second place, Kuykendall Monadales, Richland Center, Wisconsin, with Kuykendall 12-16. Third place, Ryan Gann, Leaf River, Illinois. 4, Caleb and Kendra Klein, Claypool, Indiana. 5, Lydia Letman, Waterloo, Illinois. Sixth place to Ryan Gann, Leaf River, Illinois. And 7, Chad Bruns, Herman, Minnesota.
As we get out here in our late spring Shetland ewe lambs, I'm real happy with this top 5. I think the quality is really, really deep here. Just some subtle differences that separate them out. The ewe I'm starting with is the big volume ewe. You get your hands on her. She's got a ton of meat and muscle in her, yet you split that fleece open. It is beautiful from front to rear, has really nice luster, really nice touch to it. If I could, I'd really like to maybe just change her off those rear legs a little bit in comparison to the ewe in second. The ewe in second, in terms of structural build, is just spot on in a Shetland sheep. She's out on all 4 corners. She tracks real wide, real square and level down her top. Just maybe a fleece that isn't quite as soft, isn't quite as lustrous compared to that ewe that wins the class, but she's an awful good one to stand in second. The ewe here in third, very similar to the ewe in second, just not as much of her. You get your hands on her, she's not as wide, not as bold dimensioned as that ewe in second. But again, has a nice fleece, a fleece that I'd maybe like to just soften up a little bit in comparison to the 2 ewes above her, but a really nice made kind of ewe. Ewe here in fourth, again, another big-bodied kind of ewe, a ewe that maybe doesn't tie in quite as nice as the 3 above her in this class out here. I'd maybe like to just square her up a little out over her hip and down through her rear leg to move up the class. Ewe in fifth, I really like the fleece on this ewe, a ewe that just gets a little too narrow when we watch her track from behind. If we could just square her up out over that hip, she'd move up a few spots. But again, a very nice group of late spring ewe lambs. Let's give these exhibitors a round of applause.
Placing on the late spring ewe lamb class for the Shetlands, first place goes to Liberty Acres Essie, 312. Dordery Levitt, Parker City, Indiana. Second place to Springs Tube, Pandora's Jewel, 848. Alexandra Springs Tube, West Stockbridge, Massachusetts. Third place to Amy Springs Tube, West Stockbridge, Massachusetts. 4, Elizabeth Levitt, Parker City, Indiana. 5, to Parker Eisenhower, Lebanon, Indiana. 6, Larry Hopkins, Zionsville, Indiana. 7, Dordery Levitt, Parker City, Indiana. 8th place, Parker Eisenhower, Lebanon, Indiana. 9, Larry Hopkins, Zionsville, Indiana. And 10, Evelyn Maines, Lebanon, Indiana. Placing on the Monadale pair yearling ewe class, first place goes to Cody Jacobson, LeGrand, California. Second, Kuykendall Monadales, Richland Center, Wisconsin. Third place, Mallory Corzat, Berwick, Illinois. 4, Ryan Gann, Leaf River, Illinois. And 5, Lydia Letman, Waterloo, Illinois. Placing on the pair of ewe lambs for the Shetland show, first place goes to Dordery Levitt, Parker City, Indiana. Second place, Emma O'Brien, Lebanon, Indiana. Third place to Elizabeth Levitt, Parker City, Indiana. Fourth place, Evelyn Maines, Lebanon, Indiana. Fifth, Alexandra Springstube, West Stockbridge, Massachusetts. Sixth, Larry Hopkins, Zionsville, Indiana. And 7 to Parker Eisenhower, Lebanon, Indiana. 8th place to Hannah Smith, Rhineyville, Kentucky. Emma O'Brien, we need your first place yearling ewe, and Evelyn Main, your second place senior ewe lamb in the ring, please.
Class of ewe lambs here in our Merino show. Again, I think that there's some challenges as there's just not one that really puts it all together. Again, I like the ruggedness and the youthfulness, but brood ewe potential of this first place ewe. Huge rib, big top, big square hip, very correct on her feet and legs. She's still feminine through her front end. She's got a longer stapled fleece in second and third, I think, but it's not quite as fine and quite as uniform as those two. I'd change that about it. I think it just opens up a little bit, but she is shown in a little bit more fleece than either one of these two, and I think I appreciate that about her. She just kind of lands in first hole quite nicely. I think second place pushes her extremely hard, and even third place does to a certain extent. I like that extra length and elevation. I like that levelness and length down her top. She's just not as wide and as massive through her rib and down her top. She's not as broody in her look. I think that fleece is very soft. In fact, I think this is probably the best fleeced ewe in this class. That's where I'm going to land for that. I like that density. I like that uniformity. I like that softness. A little longer staple, a little more uniform than the ewe right behind her. But two really, really nice, good fleeced ewes. I think all 3 or 4 of these top ewes have got excellent fleeces. I think the ewe in third is probably the most youthful appearing, most attractive ewe. She's probably got as much future as anything in this class. I like that about her. Again, she sets up on square on all 4 corners. She's very feminine through her front end. Again, she just gives up some frame and some growth and some performance to those 2 ahead of her. Not quite the fleece productivity we see. Again, it's been fit down a little bit tighter, but again, it's very uniform, very soft to the touch, very fine, nice handling fleece to land in fourth hole. Ewe in fifth, I like a lot of things about her. I like her rear third or rear 2/3. She's good through her rib cage. She's good out of her hip and her hind legs. I like to change those front knees quite a bit on her. She just doesn't seem to have the correctness of structure there. If we could change that about her, maybe densing that fleece up a little bit in comparison to the 2 right ahead of her. Really nice ewe to land in fourth hole. Good fleece here in fifth, a fleece that's, again, very, very uniform, very correct to the touch from shoulder to breech. Maybe a little bit coarser when I get in there and evaluate it. Still very fine, and it's got a good fine merino fleece, but when you compare it to the top 4, it's just a touch coarser. She's just not quite as attractive, not quite as correct in her hip and her hind legs as those ewes ahead of her, but a ewe that really lands in fifth hole quite nicely. Again, let's give these merino exhibitors a nice hand on a good set of ewe lambs.
Placing on the senior ewe lamb class for the Merinos, first place goes to Gadsby, 22139, Betts Sheep Farm, Felton, Delaware. Second place to Kraus, 251, Deller Sheep Farm, Steve Deller, Harrod, Ohio. Third to Diller Sheep Farm, Steve Diller, Harrod, Ohio. 4th place to Megan's Merinos, Genera, Ohio. 5th place, Adriana Finley, Asheville, Ohio. 6th place, Megan's Merinos, Genera, Ohio. 7 to Adriana Finley, Asheville, Ohio. And 8 to Adriana Finley, Asheville, Ohio.
As we get ready to select our champion and reserve champion Shetland ewe here this evening, I just want to thank everybody for having me out. It's certainly been my pleasure, my honor to sort through your Shetlands here this evening. I know we still have a few classes left, but I'm very happy with the 8 individuals we have out here. These are sheep that have some structure, have some design, yet have very nice fleeces, in my opinion. Certainly some differences in type and kind between these individuals, but I think all very, very high quality in their own right. So at this time, I'll go out and select your grand and reserve grand champion for this year's North American during the 50th anniversary. But let's give all these Shetland exhibitors a big round of applause.
Really a tough class down here in the Monadale side. The ewe lamb I started with is just the most complete individual. You get your hands on this ewe, she's super straight down her top. She's got plenty of rib and dimension. It appears, and I'm going to tell you that you guys probably already stand from the side and go, look at the front end on that ewe. She doesn't really have that. If you take some of that wool off of there, off that shoulder, she's as good, if not better, than any sheep out here in this particular class. She's really, really good down her top. She's the most correct individual. She's really upfronted. I really appreciate this ewe lamb in this particular class. 2nd place ewe lamb, she's just really super. She's closely follows my 1st place ewe. Just not enough to her today. She's a little tight in her flank. She's a little, I'd like to give her a little bit more spring and rib. Once again, she's a really, really long-bodied ewe, really good topped. Just like to give her a little more width and dimension. But down here in the 3rd place ewe, this is the problem child for me. When you get your hands on, she's shown in really short fleece. I'd just like to, from a kind of a rear angle view, I'd like to change the way this sheep balances out. She's good in her front. She's pretty good back in through her hind, basically rear 1/3. But when she goes to walk out, she just wants to kind of slough and put her head down and neck back down through her shoulders. She's the shortest fleece sheep out here. I really appreciate the depth and the width of body. I just like to tie her a little bit better together to put her up into the upper part of the class. Really nice extreme ewe down here in 4th. Just once again, not enough to her. If I could change this sheep back on her back wheels, I'd probably move her up a little bit in this particular class. Another really short fleeced ewe. Once again, a ewe that maybe just doesn't balance out enough for me today to move her up into the upper part of this class. Thank you.
For the Shetland show, our champion came out of the late spring ewe lamb class, 2851, Liberty Acres, Essie, 312, Doherty Levitt, Parker City, Indiana. The reserve champion from the early spring ewe lamb class, 2841, was the entry, Emma O'Brien, Lebanon, Indiana. Placing on the senior ewe lamb class for the Monadale show, 1st place to Jacobson, 2313, Laura Brinkman, Goodhue, Minnesota. 2nd to Jacobson, 2320, Cody Jacobson, LeGrand, California. 3rd place, Chad Bruns, Herman, Minnesota. 4th place, Cody Jacobson, LeGrand, California. 5th, Chad Bruns, Herman, Minnesota. And 6th place, Ted Vondenheuvel Kid, St. Mary's, Ohio.
If we could get a nice round of applause for senior champion over here on the Monadale side. Just a nice set of ewes, really a lot of width and dimension. You appreciate that about them, yet they've got some femininity up through the front. Yeah, there's some type and kind differences that maybe that's being really, really nitpicky. Hope you can see kind of what I'm looking for today. I want some correct sheep. I need to have some width and some dimension, but have some rib to them, and sheep that balance out. I'll go out and congratulate your champion in reserve today. Thank you.
Senior champion ewe for the Monadales was the fitted yearling ewe Jacobson, 2206, Cody Jacobson, La Grande, California. The reserve senior champion was the first place senior ram lamb Jacobson 23-13, Laura Brinkman, Goodhue, Minnesota.
Well, I think we get into our older spring or older ewe lambs, winter ewe lambs, if you want to call them. I think they just kind of line up pretty logically for me. I think there's some differences, but I think that the one I landed on is, again, just the most complete sheep. I think she could be a little squarer hipped in comparison to the ewe right behind her, but I like her rib shape. I like her front end. I like the way she moves around the ring. When she walked in the ring, I thought, here's a ewe that I can land on as long as her fleece is acceptable enough. And when I parted, I was very pleased to see that it's very uniform, very dense, very fine, and very soft to the touch. Just kind of puts everything together very well and wins this class quite nicely. I do like the body design of this second place ewe. Again, she's out on all four corners. She's very thick and level down her top. She's wide through her hip and sets up nice and square on those rear legs. She's got a little bit more fleece staple length. She's uniform in that staple length. She's uniform in that grade. She's just a little bit tippy. She's got a little bit weather damage out there on the tips of that fleece. I'd like to change that about her. Maybe make her a little bit more dense, give her a little more density so that doesn't happen quite as easy. Again, a nice ewe to land in second hole. Ewe, much like the first place ewe, that's very extended through her front end, very feminine, very long down her top. She doesn't tie quite as well there at her hip-loin junction. She wants to pop that tail head up just a little bit more. Fleece isn't quite as uniform. There's a little bit more character break coming up on that rib cage. Not quite as dense, not quite as productive. She lands in third hole quite nicely. Two good fleece ewes here in 4 and 5. I think I settled on the best fleece ewe being right here in the fourth hole. I like the uniformity quality. I like the production of that fleece. There may be some that are notch finer than she is, but she's not out of the ordinary in terms of being too coarse for this breed. I think she's a very uniform. Again, she carries that same uniformity back into the breech. I like the density. I like the cleanliness and the whiteness and brightness of this fleece. Just a nice ewe to land into the fourth hole. You much like her in fifth. Again, they're both a little bit more conventional in their frame size and their growth. They're just a little bit more moderate in that aspect. A shorter bodied ewes, both of them. The ewe in fifth is just not quite as complete in her fleece as the ewe ahead of her, but again, a really sound, very complete ewe to land into the fifth hole. Really nice set. Let's give these exhibitors a round of applause. Best fleeces right there.
Placing on the Merino Early Junior ewe lamb class, first place to InBody 2306, Megan's Merinos, Genera, Ohio. Second place to Gadsby 2310, Greenleaf Valley, Tim and Casey Gadsby, Stoneboro, Pennsylvania. Third to Megan's Merinos, Genera, Ohio. 4, Adriana Finley, Asheville, Ohio. 5, Betts Sheep Farm, Felton, Delaware. 6th place, Alyssa Marvin, Wauseon, Ohio. And 7 to Adriana Finley. Placing on the Shetland Flock class, first place to Dordery Levitt, Parker City, Indiana. Second, Emma O'Brien, Lebanon, Indiana. Third place, Evelyn Maines, Lebanon, Indiana. 4, Parker Eisenhower, Lebanon, Indiana. 5, Hannah Smith, Rhineyville, Kentucky. Winner of the Premier Exhibitor Award for the Shetland Show is Dordery Levitt, Parker City, Indiana. Placing on the best fleece for the Shetland Show goes to, it's the yearling ewe, 2827 entry number, Yavaga 0061, shown by Emma O'Brien, Lebanon, Indiana. That does conclude our Shetland Show. Our judge has been Bill Leib. Judging the Texel Show is Roger High of Richwood, Ohio. Roger is the executive director of the Ohio Sheep Improvement Association and the Ohio Sheep and Wool Program. He's also Director of Livestock with the Ohio Farm Bureau Federation. Roger retired as the State Sheep Extension Program Specialist. He now operates a small flock of Poll Dorset sheep with his wife, Holly. Let's welcome Roger High to your Texel Show.
Really a deep class of Monadale ewe lambs down here. Ewe lamb I start with, you really appreciate the overall width and dimension, but yet she's super feminine up through that front. She tracks around the ring like she's supposed to. You really like the way that she's designed down her top. Comes back into a nice lot of width and dimension from hooks to pins, and she's an easy class winner for me. If I was going to change her, maybe bring her up just a tick on that right rear leg. That's being pretty critical in this particular class. The second place ewe really closely follows that. Just a ewe that's really nice and super right up through her front. She's maybe a little taller at the point of her shoulder, but she gives up a little length of body. You really like the way the ewe's designed down her top. She's plenty long from her 13th rib back. I just like to maybe give her a little more length of body from flank to flank. Same with my third place ewe. Real close placing here between second and third. The third place ewe maybe just doesn't have enough gas in her tank for me to put her up over that second place ewe. A really long bodied ewe down here in fourth. A ewe that's dimensionally probably the longest bodied ewe in the class. Dimensionally, just when she walks out, she wants to just get a little rounder in her shoulder. Yes, there is a little bit of extra wool right there, but I think a ewe that's really nice up through her front. She's really correct on her feet and legs, just like the second and third ewes that are right in front of her. Down here in fourth, a little bit of a problem child for me. When this ewe starts to walk out, she's really good when she stands. When she starts to walk out, she wants to track a little bit funny off the front and rear legs for me today. Thank you.
Am I on? There I'm in. Good evening, and it's even though it's pretty late here, we're going looking forward to judging a really good, hopefully a really good Texel show here tonight. Certainly a pleasure to be here with you. Last time I judged here at the North American, it was that 1 year that most of us want to forget, and it was dark in here, and we was judging Romneys, and it got late, and so it's a pleasure to be back here with you. This evening, I've been around here at the North American for many, many years, and so with my parents showing the Shropshires, and have showed a little bit here myself. But we get into this Texel yearling ram. I just think we have a ram up here that just totally dominates the class. When you get back and you look at this ram, when you get into it, this ram, he's just a meat wagon. Really masculine up about that head. Really like that overall look of this ram. Just really thick and wide in that muzzle. Really nice about that head and those ears. But what you really appreciate when you get into him is just really correct up through that front end. He's really wide in that as we come out over that top. He's deep as we get into that loin and across that top. Really massive as we get back into that hip area, and carries that thickness way down, clear down into his lower leg. Just a really nice combination, overall combination ram. A lot of bone in him. Just puts the most things together for me. He's going to come out here and win this class. The ram that probably does the next for me in terms of that mass, in terms of that masculinity, is this ram I got here in second. He certainly doesn't have the overall mass and design that we have in this first place ram, but I think he fits into this second place in this class in terms of the mass he has over that top and down through the center of that leg. Certainly our lightest muscle ram is a ram I got back here in this third class. Doesn't give me that depth of muscle as we get back into that loin. Certainly a ram that we'd like to just widen him out as we come back to the center of that leg. That's how we see these three rams here today. Let's give our exhibitors a nice round of applause.
Placing on the Monadale January ULAM class, first place goes to Smith, 2301, Ty Smith, Stewartson, Illinois. Second place to entry 2261, Kuykendall, 1244, Kuykendall, Monadale's Richland Center, Wisconsin. Third to Corzat, 2305, Mallory Corzat, Berwick, Illinois. Fourth place to Laura Brinkman, Goodhue, Minnesota. Fifth, Cody Jacobson, LeGrand, California. Sixth place to Mallory Corzat, Berwick, Illinois. Seventh place to Chad Bruns, Herman, Minnesota. Eighth place, Lydia Lettman, Waterloo, Illinois. 9, Bondenheuvel Kids, St. Mary's, Ohio. And 10, Greg Miller, Bruce, South Dakota.
We have our one ram in the class, a ram that you really have to appreciate him for the masculinity he has about that head. A ram that certainly has some muscle out of the top. We could probably give him some more depth of muscle as we get back into that loin, but he carries a lot of thickness in that leg. One thing I'd like to change about him, I'd like to change him on those wheels quite a bit. He seems to have some structural problems about him, but a ram that we're going to give first place to in this particular class today. Let's give him a nice round of applause.
Placing on the yearling ram class for the Texels, first place went to Pine Knob Farm, 2224, Rachel Gately, Summers, Connecticut. Second place to Adams, 2412, Adams, Texels, Shelbyville, Indiana. Third to Brant and Avery Lindsay, Coshocton, Ohio. Placing on the fall ram class, first place to Brockelman, 215 FR, Bockelman Family Texels, Greensburg, Indiana.
Well, we round out with a younger class of ewe lambs here, and again, I think there's some give and take, but I think there's some awfully good ewe lambs from top to bottom in this class once again. And we landed on a couple of ewes here that, like I said, if I could put these two together, I'd have a ewe that really, really fires me up. The ewe in first is really classy in her look. She's up-fronted, she's long-necked, she's smooth-shouldered, very feminine, very level down her top. I think where she beats two is she's just a little denser in that fleece. She's a little more uniform from shoulder to breech. They're both fine enough, they're both correct enough in their fleece grade and uniformity, but she's just a little denser and tighter and a little softer to the touch. Ewe in second's got a longer, a little bit more productive fleece maybe today, but it is a little looser, a little more open, a little weathered. There's a little more dirt penetration in it than we see in that first place ewe, but two really nice ewes. Ewe in second definitely got more rib shape and more mass and more thickness down her top and through her hip, and I like that about her. I think we just flip that pair on fleece quality today and go 1-2. Ewe in three is another nice flaced ewe. Again, a very soft handling ewe, a ewe that's very uniform from shoulder to breech. We put them in motion. She just doesn't hold together quite as easy. She's not quite as flexible, not quite as attractive when she walks around the ring as the first two. Just doesn't look quite as fluid and quite as easy on the move as those first two. Ewe in third, again, a ewe that maybe looks a little out of place. She's a little bit more plain in her look. She's not quite as fancy to look at. She's got a ton of rib shape. I like the maternal traits in her. I like the width and thickness down her top. Where she falls in here is this is our best fleeced ewe in this class. Again, it's very bright and white to the touch. Again, it's obviously been blanketed. I like the lock formation, the length, the staple length, the uniformity. Maybe not quite as bold in that lock formation as the one that we called a good fleeced ewe earlier, but again, a very fine, very high quality, very productive fleeced ewe here, especially for a ewe this age. Ewe in fifth is another ewe that when she walked out of the ring from a style and balance and eye appeal standpoint, I really, really like her. She runs downhill the right direction. She's elevated at her shoulders. She's long through her neck and correct in her shoulder blade set. She moves around the ring exceptionally well. Very wide, very, very, very correct on her hip and her hind legs. Need to change her fleece. She's got a little bit more belly wool creeping up on those sides. Just not quite the uniformity, not quite the productivity that we see in these ewes ahead of her, but a really, really outstanding ewe. If that fleece shears off and grows back as a yearling, she's going to probably fool me a year from now. But again, a nice set. Let's congratulate these ewes, or these exhibitors on a nice class of ewe lambs.
Placing on the class of Merino late junior ewe lambs. First place goes to Diller R. 575, Diller Sheep Farm, Steve Diller, Harrod, Ohio. Second place to Gadsby 2333, Greenleaf Valley, Tim and Casey Gadsby, Stoneboro, Pennsylvania. Third place, Megan's Merino's, Gennaro, Ohio. Fourth place to Laurel Stone, Veneta, Oregon. Fifth place, Greenleaf Valley, Tim and Casey Gadsby, Stoneboro, Pennsylvania. Sixth place, Diller Sheep Farm, Steve Diller, Harrod, Ohio. Seventh place, Adriana Finley, Asheville, Ohio. Eighth, Megan's Merino's, Gennaro, Ohio. Ninth place, Dylan Marvin, Wauseon, Ohio. And 10, Dylan Marvin.
We get into this next Texel class, and I think once again we can talk about this one coming up here in the top end of this class. It's just the one that just overpowers the entire class in terms of a lot of combination of things. Just a big, powerful kind of a ram. You start up here at the head, just very masculine. You got to love the color combinations that this ram has on his head. Very masculine about that head. Very clean up through those shoulders. More impressive as you get out across this ram. He just really gets wide and deep and up in that rib and rack area. He carries that muscling and thickness and width and depth clear back into that loin, clear back into that leg, into that rump, and clear down to that hip. He walks in a very nice set of feet and legs. There's just a lot of things you can really say about this ram. He easily comes to the top of the class for me in this particular ram class. Ram I have her in second, certainly a little bit shorter in his overall makeup. Again, you start up here at the head. He's certainly maybe not as as masculine as about that first place ram, but he has a lot of masculinity about him. He gets a little heavier, a little deeper up into that shoulder area than what that ram we have in first. He's certainly not as long out over that top. Again, when you get into this ram, he just doesn't give us that depth of loin, that thickness and three-dimensional loin like we see in that first place ram. But you sure appreciate for the size of this ram, he really fills out down through the center of that leg really well and really kind of pulls himself up to that second place class. Ram I really thought about using just a little bit higher. I really am concerned about the front end of this ram. I'm not overly keen about how those legs really get wide on him, really get pretty thick out in terms of pretty wide out on here. That's a real structural problem for me. But I felt like with every lot of other things, as we come into this shoulder back, he really puts a lot of things together in terms of some muscling and some depth and some thickness back into that, in that rack and that hip, back into that loin, down into that leg. Certainly a ram that's longer bodied than my second place ram. Just like to maybe change that front end of this ram to pull him up into that second place spot. Coming down here to our fourth place ram, a ram that when you stand back and look at him, you really appreciate the amount of thickness. He tends to be a little bit rougher out over that top, tends to be a little bit deeper up in that front end than maybe what we'd like to see. Really have to appreciate him as he get up on that head, just very masculine about that head. Really carries a lot of thickness back into that leg. Just a ram that kind of fits into that fourth place spot for me there today. Ram I have here, there's this, really this fourth, fifth, and sixth place ram. They just don't have enough in terms of that muscling to them. You get back into that rack, into that loin. Just like to really give them some more depth of muscle, some thickness of muscle to get them any higher in the class today. Smallest ram we have out here in the class, ram we just again like to put some muscling into him to get him higher. But a really nice class of rams. Let's give them a nice round of applause.
Really a nice class of ewe lambs down here in the Monadale side. There's probably something in particular about all five of these that I don't really care for. I'm not finding that one that just reaches out and grabs me. This is the one that I think, in my mind, has the most possibilities in the future. This ewe is super up through her front. From that 13th rib forward, she's awesome. She laid in nice into her shoulder. Head and neck come out of the top of their shoulder supposed to be. She's one of the most correct sheep here in this particular class. Would I change her? Sure. I'd like to change her. I'd like to lift that dock up just a little bit. But I think a ewe that's just really super patterned. Really appreciate the femininity about her. The second place ewe closely follows that. A ewe that when you get your hands on her, she's really, really long cocked. You really appreciate the width and dimension from that 13th rib back. She's probably a little bit longer in her 13th rib back than the ewe in front of her, but I think a ewe, I'd just like to fix her off those front feet just a little bit. When she goes to track out, she wants to kind of slap them down and spread those toes out a little bit. That's how I'd like to change that one. The second place ewe, or third place ewe, probably the most complete ewe in the class. She's the heaviest boned ewe in the class. She just really shortens up for me from flank to flank, just like the ewes right below her. Ewe that she's got a whale of a top on her. She's shown in short fleece. She's head and neck come out of the top of her shoulders like she should. I'd just like to change her a little bit from flank to lengthen her out. The next two ewes, wow, just a super set of females right here. Maybe I think they're younger than the ewes that are in front of her. You really like the way that the eye appeal to them. They're really feminine up through their front. They're tied in nice into their shoulder. You get around behind them. They don't disappoint you there. I'd like to change them flank to flank for me, for the ones in front of them, just to lengthen them out just a little bit. I really appreciate all five of these particular ewes. Thank you.
Placing on the February ewe lamb class for the Monadales, first place goes to 2283, Jacobson 2331, Jasmine Gates, Cairo, Missouri, second place to Jacobson, 2337, Cody Jacobson, LaGrange, California. Third place to Ty Smith, Stewartson, Illinois. Fourth place, Kuykendall Monadales, Richland Center, Wisconsin. Fifth place, Kuykendall Monadales. Sixth place to Mallory Korzat, Berwick, Illinois. Seventh place, Greg Miller, Bruce, South Dakota. And eighth place to Vondenheuvel Kids, St. Mary's, Ohio. Placing on the Merino pair at Ewe Lamb's first place to Greenleaf Valley, Tim and Casey Gadsby, Stoneboro, Pennsylvania. Second place, Megan's Merinos, Genera, Ohio. Third, Diller Sheep Farm of Ohio. Fourth, to Betts Sheep Farm, Belton, Delaware. Fifth, Adriano Brindley of Asheville, Ohio. And sixth, Dylan Martin, Wauseon, Ohio. Placing on the Texel Winter Ram Lamb class, first place to Pine Knot Farm, 2313, Rachel Gately, Summers, Connecticut. Second place, Bockelman, 316, 132 AI, Bockelman Family Texels, Greensburg, Indiana. Third place, Alexis Cook, Oldenburg, Indiana. 4, Adams Texels, Shelbyville, Indiana. Fifth place, Alexis Cook, Oldenburg, Indiana. And sixth place, Brent and Avery Lindsay, Coshocton, Ohio.
Well, again, it was certainly a pleasure to be invited and asked to come line up the National Merino Show here in Louisville this November, and I'm super pleased with what I've seen. I expected to see some high quality fleeces, and I tell you, if we could get our wool market back up, these sheep would have a tremendous value in that aspect of the industry right now. Super good fleece to use on all 8 of these ewes, just really fine, very uniform, very soft, very complete and productive kind of fleeces. I think to me there's one that puts it all together in my mind in terms of having some brood ewe potential, a ewe that looks like she's going to go out and be easy to breed, easy to lamb, easy to raise those lambs and put that into a package that carries a super, super nice fleece. We're going to use that yearling ewe for champion. She's just awful hard to get around. I think it's close. I think there's some differences in the other 4 ewes in contention for reserve, and some things that could make them, higher quality in the next generation. But for me, the one that looks the most like that yearling, and I think follows her type and kind, she travels around the ring exceptionally well, has a good fleece, maybe not quite as productive as that yearling. We're going to use the senior ewe lamb for reserve. Nothing against these younger ewes. I really think they've got a bright future. I just like the design of those 2 older ewes. Congratulations on a nice set.
Gadsby, 2254, Betts Sheep Farm, Belton, Delaware. Reserve champion came out of the senior ewe lamb class. Gadsby, 22139, Betts Sheep Farm, Belton, Delaware.
Probably a class for me that just didn't come together as well as a couple of the other classes that we've had before. But I think when we really get into this class and we get to evaluate, and the ram that I got up here in the top end of this class is certainly that what we call that combination sheep. Again, we start up here on this head. He's just very masculine up about that head. You got to really like the color of this ram about his points. He's being a little bit stubborn now. But you get really talking about how he is built up in that neck into that shoulder. He blends very well up into those in those areas. He's very masculine about that front end. He comes out with a lot of width and thickness and depth. When you really look at him, he's got a big old barrel on him for a fairly young ram. Really wide in that top as we come out into that rack and into that hip and back through the center of that leg. Not overly keen about that black spot on that leg, but I think when you put the combination of things together on this particular sheep, he's got to come to the top of the class for me in terms of a lot of combination of things. Ram I got here in the second place spot, certainly another very masculine headed type of a ram, really nice in that, smooth in that design from that neck and shoulder junction. Has a nice set of feet and legs on him. Really comes back with some width and some thickness and some depth and some length as we come out over that top. Really fills himself out as we come back through the center of that leg. Really wide in that design as we come back into the center of that leg. Just a ram that I think kind of fits into this spot, the second place spot, really well for me today. Ram I have here in third, certainly the smallest ram I have in the class, but really a really green handling, really raw handling lamb. A ram that I think has a lot of future to him. I think when you really get up into that rack and you really start feeling him across those ribs, there's just not a lot of fat there yet. He's got a lot of growth potential, but really you got to appreciate how wide and thick and deep he's going to be as he comes out and matures. Really wide as we get back into this hip, down into that leg, really walks on a nice set of feet and legs. I think a ram that as we get on down the line certainly has the potential to look at in terms of that Texel ram. Really long-bodied ram is the next ram I have here. Again, get concerned a little bit about that front end on him. He's a little bit rougher out over that top. Certainly a ram with some width and some thickness as we come out over that top. Probably a little bit narrower than some of the rams that we have above him. Certainly a ram that as we get back through the center of that leg, he just doesn't have the width and thickness of those three rams above him for me to get him any higher in this class today. But a nice class of ram lambs. Let's give him a nice round of applause.
Second place to Pine Knob Farm 2361, Colin Beebe, Summers, Connecticut. Third place to Adams Texels, Shelbyville, Indiana. Fourth place, Alexis Cook, Oldenburg, Indiana.
Really deep class down here in the March ewe lambs on the Monadale side. Ewe lamb I'm going to start with is just kind of a fault-free individual. You really like the way she moves around the ring. She sets out on a nice set in feet and legs. She's really angular up through that front end. She's pretty. She's got a big old wide hip in her. You really appreciate that about her. But yet she's feminine and she's clean. And you know, if I would change her, maybe I'd like to see her track a little bit narrower, if that makes sense. Maybe she's a little bit wide, but she doesn't roll off those back legs at all. And I think it's just an easy individual to win this class. The second place ewe lamb's a little bit of a problem child for me. Sometimes when I look at her, you really like the length of body. She's one of the longest bodied ewes in the class. She wants to pull her head and neck down in the front of her shoulders there. That the neck wants to come out of the front. I'd like to just crank that back up, put it right up on top of the shoulders. Really a long-bodied U. She wouldn't appear as long-bodied if you put that neck where it's supposed to be. Just another nice U that's really correct and moves out around the ring fairly well. The third place U, really super individual up through her front. This is how I think that they're supposed to be made. In my opinion, the head and neck come right out of the top of the shoulders, right on top of those front legs. You really like that about her. That means that she's going to start to shorten up just a little bit, flank to flank for me, but I think a really nice, youthful kind of a U down here in third. Really appreciate the overall eye appeal on this U down here in fourth. A U that maybe when you get around behind her, I'd like to just widen her out a little bit. She wants to track a little bit narrow for me today, opposed to the ones that are in front of her in this class. The next U, a really super pattern U down here. I'd just like to darken her up in her nose just for me a little bit today. Thank you.
Placing on the class of March ewe lambs for the Monadales, first place goes to entry number 2291, Smith, 2310, Ty Smith, Stewartson, Illinois. Second place to Corzat, 2396, Mallory Corzat, Berwick, Illinois. Third place to Kuykendall Monadales, Richland Center, Wisconsin. Fourth place, Ryan Gann, Leaf River, Illinois. Fifth to Mallory Corzat, Berwick, Illinois. Sixth, Chad Bruns, Herman, North Minnesota. And seventh, Bondenhupel Kids, St. Mary's, Ohio. Placing on the Merino flock class, first place to Megan's Merinos, Genera, Ohio. Second place, the Greenleaf Valley, Tim and Kendra Gadsby of Stoneboro, Pennsylvania. Third place, Betts Sheep Farm, Belton, Delaware. Fourth place, Diller Sheep Farm. And fifth place, Adriana Finley, Asheville, Ohio. Placing on the pair of ram lambs for the Texels, first place to Rachel Gately, Summers, Connecticut. Second place to Bockelman Family Texels, Greensburg, Indiana. Third place, Adams Texels, Shelbyville, Indiana. And fourth place, Alexis Cook, Oldenburg, Indiana.
Certainly been a pleasure to get through your Rams here today. I think we've got some really nice, 7 nice individuals out here. Certainly quality has been pretty good out here in terms of finding some Rams with a good breed character and be able to walk around the ring. We got to remember that what these are being used for terminal sires across the country and are working very well in a lot of these places that are producing some of these smaller, thicker, meatier lambs. And I think we need to find those sheep in terms of those terminal sires that are going to put a lot of width in the top, a lot of thickness in the top. A lot of muscling as we come back through the center of that leg. I think I got 2 Rams out here that kind of fit that bill for me today. I find one just to be a little bit cleaner up in that front end. We're going to use this Ram right here for our champion for today's show. Congratulations. We're going to follow that Ram up here with this yearling Ram for reserve. Just 2 nice Rams that kind of come to the top, hit me the hardest as in terms of that champion and reserve out here today. But congratulations to all of you for a nice set of Rams.
How are you? Good.
Beautiful. Way beautiful.
For the Texels, our champion ram was a winter ram lamb. Entry 3822, Pine Knob Farm, 2313, Rachel Gately, Summers, Connecticut. Reserve champion was our first place yearling ram, Pine Knob Farm, 2224, also Rachel Gately, Summers, Connecticut.
Just a really super pattern ewe to start this class. A little more youthfulness here. Ewe that maybe doesn't have the mass that the ewes behind her does, but she's really tied into her shoulder. You really appreciate the overall top and width dimension. She's the longest ewe from her 13th rib back, even though that she's a little bit smaller frame than the ewes behind her. Most of the 2 ewes in particular behind her, they're a little bit longer from that 13th rib forward than they are from their back. The second place ewe, you really appreciate the overall extension and dimension up through their front. I'd like to maybe give this ewe just a little bit more width and dimension back from her in her hip and down into her lower leg. The thickest ewe down here in third, ewe just a little bit of a problem child for me. She doesn't really tie quite like I'd like to see, but yet she's got a big old top in her, big old rump and hip structure. Maybe would like to raise that dock up just a little bit for me today. The next ewe down here starts to shorten up a little bit, get a little bolder in her shoulder, back down into her, between her chest floor and up in through her brisket area. Really nice hipped ewe, a ewe that's really nice from that 13th rib back. Maybe just like to tie her together a little bit up through that front. The next ewe, when you get around behind this ewe, she just doesn't have that width that I'm looking for. Maybe she looks as close pattern-wise as my first place ewe, but she wants to track really narrow, and she gets a little bit narrow from hooks to pins for me. Thank you.
Placing on the slick shorn ewe lamb class for the Monadales, first place to entry 2298, Triple K 0073, Caleb and Kendra Klein, Claypool, Indiana. Second place to entry number 2293, Bruns 21316, Chad Bruns, Herman, Minnesota. Third to Chad Bruns, Herman, Minnesota. Fourth place, Lydia Lutman, Waterloo, Illinois. Fifth place, Caleb and Kendra Klein, Claypool, Indiana. And sixth, Ryan Gann, Leaf River, Illinois. The best fleece animal on the Merino show came out of the yearling ewe class. It was 2110 Lucy, Laurel Stone, Veneta, Ohio. And our premier exhibitor for the Merino show is Megan's Merinos, Genera, Ohio. That does conclude our Merino show. Our judge has been Mr. Todd Taylor.